Welcome to the Lost Signals Discusses Film and TV. Using the revolutionary Manzur-Ramosi Thurlow scale,
or MONS,
we scrupulously review these art forms with an emphasis on narrative structure. Join us for another entertaining episode.
Hello there. Welcome back to Lost Signals Reviews Film and Television. And here in the midst of the plague, we are doing our virus-themed and virus-centric films. I'm Scott Thurlow, here from the future to save you from the virus, and I'm here with Jonathan Ian Manzer.
And I'm already dead from the plague.
Of course. And Chris Morgan.
When I get upset, the ground shakes.
And Stephen Amosi.
Yeah. Hey, I'm back from 2035.
Mm-hmm. It looks like you're in an institution right now. But either way, we are doing a film called 12 Monkeys, which is one of my favorite films. It doubles, in fact, as a virus/plague-centric film, as well as a time travel film. It is directed by Terry Gilliam, which we reviewed a recent film of his, Brazil, a couple weeks ago. And we're about to launch into it. So before we do, I believe E has a logline for us.
Le Jeté Extended Edition.
Yeah, that's right. And which we also did. It is based on a short French film from the 60s, which we did review a while back called Le Jeté. It sort of expands upon that plot, and I will tell you about it. So Bruce Willis plays a man from the future in a world that is ravaged by a virus in which 5 billion people have died in 1996. And time travel shenanigans send him back to the past to sort of, if not rectify it, at least get research and information for them in the future to allow humanity to reclaim it. He ends up in various institutions and prisons and meets a psychologist named Dr. Catherine Rayleigh, played by Madeline Stowe. And they start to each sort of internally question their own reality. She's convinced that he's delusional, but since the plot itself tells us that he is in fact from the future, so they sort of like cross over paths and not become lovers, but become like close compatriots. And variously, like he gets jumped from time to time. He gets shipped to World War II, like for example, like real quickly. So eventually, yes,
World War One.
I'm sorry, you're right. World War One. You're right. The trenches of France. So eventually they come to realize that, in fact, there is a virus happening, but it's not perpetuated by Brad Pitt's and his little like band of eco-terrorists as they think it is. Mm-hmm. And it's sort of like almost like a closed loop in a sense. A lot of things happen like throughout it, but that's the main general idea. Bruce Willis comes from the future, tries to prevent the virus and find information to lead to humanity being able to reclaim itself. And they fall into this weird like rabbit hole of questioning reality.
If only knew about social distancing, none of this would have happened.
Yeah. If that was a thing back then maybe they would have been okay.
Could have held everything off.
It's pretty much it. So I just tried to keep it like simple because it's a long film, longer at least, and it throws a lot of stuff at you. But I think it is admittedly, one of my favorite movies just in general, specifically time travel and specifically virus, which is why I picked it for this little section that we're doing. So given all of that, I, of course, want to say that I'm going to give it a 3. I would say 2.5. I know like we've been doing that recently. We're like just a little like here and there, but I think it's very, very strong. I think the script is super tight and it doesn't really leave any loopholes. There's no plot holes, I think, that you can point like, oh, they didn't explain this or this was left dangling. So given that, what do you guys make of the plot?
I have to say, when I was watching this, because I started watching it last night, finished watching it this morning, and last night, I'm like earmarking like little loopholes. I'm like, oh, they forgot about this. How are they going to work this out? And this morning when I watched it, I'm like, nope, they dealt with it all. Mm-hmm. It is a little slower in parts than I remember. There's things in it that I totally forgot. But at the end of the day, I'm right with you, Scott. I'm leaning probably more towards a 3 than I am a 2. It is definitely a 2.5. Might be a 2.55 to push me over to the 3. Mm-hmm. If anybody wants to, because I mean, personally, I think at least until we get to the Brothers Grimm, I think Terry Gilliam, even though he didn't have anything to, well, at least he didn't write the script, unlike with Brazil. I think it's a pretty fucking coherent narrative, and for something that is really really concise, really to the point as Le Jeté, which we all agree is pretty much a fucking perfect movie.
Yep.
I'm really ready to give it a 3, to be honest with you.
What do you think, Gabe?
Well, this is the first time watching, so it wasn't slow at all to me because I was enthralled by every point, and partially because I love time travel. I love poking holes in time travel films. I was attempting to poke holes in every single thing here, and it did a fairly good job. All the threads that were left untied, none of the pertinent threads were left untied. There were threads that, for instance, the old man who breaks his teeth, who may or may not actually be, or the meaning behind Bob and all of that. I mean, that might actually be Bruce Willis type character. He's breaking his own teeth and all that. But it does matter because all of the actual narrative by your bootstrap threads work perfectly for me.
Yeah, I agree. I think that this movie does a really, and I think the other three of us have seen this a bunch of times at this point. But
this is like my 10th time watching this film.
Yeah, I've probably seen it between 6 and 8 times myself. But I love that it holds up. I really enjoyed this watch of it as much as I did, my last one, and I think that it does a good job keeping the action going. Like, it's not a short film, but it's could have been like overly long, where I don't think it goes that route. I think that you get all your story beats in there where you need them, and then you kind of move on. So I think I'm gonna give it a 3.
Right. I am, of course, officially as well. Like at this point, is that a 3 for you?
It built a film by its own bootstraps.
Yeah, it's funny because I was interested to see what you make of it, given that you just said like you had never seen it all the way through, or like really familiar as at all. Like
never seen one scene. I've only had seen Le Jeté and knew that it was based on
I was
that.
curious like whether or not my bias is like putting me over the edge, but I think I was mentioning to you the script is super tight. Like you said, it wraps up all the threads it needs to, and anything else was like, to me, like sort of a red herring or just like a tangential inclusion that doesn't like detract from the main thrust of the narrative. So
and as you were mentioning the fact that they go on parallel but diverging paths, in that he knows his reality until the time travel starts to affect with him and he starts losing it. Meanwhile, I think they did a fantastic job of showing us why the psychiatrist would actually eventually end up believing him. And she's skeptical at first. She slowly starts getting more and more information.
Come out, yeah.
Granted, she was interested in this concept beforehand, so she was more open to the idea. But I actually believed her arc in choosing to join him.
Yeah, and it's a great part where when she has to convince him that he's not crazy, like they reverse roles when he comes back. I love that. Yeah, it's a really nice touch. So, all holds up quite well. We're all giving it 3s, and we shall move on to themes, and that'll be UE as well.
Well, the by the bootstraps closed loop, I think was actually one of the main thrusts of this to create a good time travel movie that is all
internally consistent.
Yes. Now, I don't believe time. I have my own problem with time travel in that it never addresses spatial aspects, only temporal, and that is to me a problem with time travel. But I think for a kind of look at the issues with sending people back and how there's multiple people going back in time and it's affecting things forward through, even though in the long run it is, in fact, it's all predestined. I think it was a very neat, one of the more consistent time travel pieces I've seen. Aside from maybe Primer. But
true.
I
good call on that.
wanted to talk about the idea that we just watched 28 Days Later, which had environmental
elements,
environmental terrorists coming in, causing the plague. And here I'm like, oh, this is interesting. That's the same. Oh, no, it's not. It's not the environmentalists at all.
It's a big red herring.
Scientists. But I like to see how different, because here's the thing is, and you see this in reality too, with people's reaction to the coronavirus, that it's very difficult for us to conceptualize such a microscopic enemy. So we always need to have kind of a villain that caused this, and whether it's environmentalists destroying science, whether it's a malevolent doctor, whether it's in reality where we're blaming China, even though it had almost nothing to do with it. The idea is that we need that villain, and I think that That was partly what they were. I don't think it was the main. I think the main thrust of this was a discussion of time travel.
Yeah, I mean, of course I agree with that, but I think there's two lines that always stuck with me. One more humorous and one like a bit more serious. So I'll start with the first one where the Bob character goes, "Oh, science ain't an exact science with these bozos," right? Like,
oh, there's certainly a psychiatric one. I thought.
Yeah, so like there's that there, and then when Catherine Rayleigh says like to one of her colleagues, like, "We're the new religion." Psychology says who's crazy, who's not, what's right, what's wrong, right? So like that's sort of not thrown in there. Like it's there in other parts of the film too, but I think the film like takes everything that we both just said and throws them into this wonderful little like sign waving ball that coincides with the narrative. So
a Barthian braid almost.
Yeah, yes, I like that. So good, Chris.
Two things. One, I want to say, going back to 28 Days Later, is it really gives, for lack of a better term, social justice warriors, environmentalists, a bad name. In this one, I thought it was funny because when Madeline Stone's character, Catherine Riley?
Rayleigh, yeah.
Really, yeah.
Puts the phone call in, I'm like, oh my God, the disease is her fault. And then to my point about the closed, the
chaps thing.
Yeah, the dangling narrative that I wasn't sure. Bruce Willis corrects it, so it kind of negates that. I really like the fact that because he actually corrected it, gives credence to the whole thing that like not all environmentalists are crazy, but these people are crazy, but they're not the cause of the virus, nor is this true ignorance, not like that she was stupid or intentionally ignorant, but that her ignorance, her relief that, maybe this thing isn't going to happen wasn't the cause. I mean, that would have been a really cheap way to hit causality with regard to time travel.
I like that. We'll say.
Yeah, but I mean, Bruce Willis when he calls from the airport and says, it's not the 12 monkeys, it's something else. I really, really like that. And I really like the fact that they twigged to it and sent not one, possibly two or more other, three other people down as insurance. And I'm sure we'll get to that later.
Yeah.
I mean, I really like the way that this was balanced. Shit, I can't remember what I was going to say about the other part of it.
Does that mean you're giving themes a one?
The psychiatric part?
Yeah, the psychiatric part. As somebody who was not diagnosed as bipolar, but trying to figure out what the fuck was wrong with them, I got a lot of my detractors were like, oh my God, I can't, when I was in therapy or whatever, it was like, oh my God, I can't believe you're falling for this. In the 90s, because you had bullshit like, Prozac Nation and Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, all this psychobabblical horseshit that really gave mental health a bad name, it was really interesting to address it because mental health did become a commodity back then.
Sure.
And as somebody who has since like 2004, 2005 been an advocate for the understanding for mental health, they put it in a very good context here.
True. It wasn't cheap or it wasn't like used just as exploitively, I guess is what you want to say. Exactly.
They actually touched on the exploitation and actually dealt with it really well. And Ian, to your point, I think they dealt with the problems that a lot of time travel movies have with the causality and so forth. I mean, I really like the fact that Bruce Willis from the beginning said, I can't stop this. It's already happened. And that when the future gives him a chance to stop it by giving him the gun, whether it's just to eliminate him, because they know they can't stop it just because he's the wild card. And so
he witnessed his own death when he was young, so there's no way.
Yeah, well, that's what happened to Elijah Tate too. But I'm talking about within terms of, the 90s and the 90s attention to pulp culture, and with the attention of the tropes of causality and the tropes of environmental and psychological stereotypes in the 90s. I thought this movie handled it very subtly and extremely well. So I'm definitely giving it a 1 because
I feel you.
It really handled everything well. It really showed all sides without doing a lot, without getting preachy, without getting bogged down in a lot of a lot of preaching,
Exposition even as well. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Without being a message movie, so to speak.
Sure.
Right.
What's your take on all that, Steve-O?
I agree with a lot of what you guys have already said, and a lot of it's already been
Sure.
gone over for sure in this question. But yeah, I think that it's a like Gilliam does the best. He kind of like takes these topics and looks at them through his own angle, which I often really appreciate the way that he does it, especially like in movies like Brazil and 12 Monkeys. The time travel aspect of it, like let's look at this closed loop time travel and see what it means when you're dealing with the aspects of being in a deterministic loop. There's actually a show that just came out, Devs, that does a very similar thing with Nick Offerman. I think it's one of Nick Offerman's best roles. I loved it. But that talks about determinism as well
in a similar way.
In a similar way, and it's kind of interesting. But yeah, so there's that. You got the psychological aspect of this, seeing Brad Pitt, Bruce Willis meeting Brad Pitt in the asylum, and kind of developing this weird friendship with him that allows him to like track the 12 Monkeys later. Like, it kind of implies that he was the origin of the term 12 Monkeys, which I kind of liked, or at least that the idea was formed while they spent time
Back
together
to
in
the
1990.
Future bootstraps thing, like you said,
Yeah. So I like all that stuff, and I'm gonna give Themes a strong one. I think that it's a really interesting movie to watch, and for that reason, one.
Yeah, I agree. Last thought is that in other hands, that could have been mishandled, but I think it was very definitely integrated in this film. So
yeah,
we're all giving it ones. And Chris, why don't you tell us about the antagonist? Who or what is the antagonist here?
This is a movie that's got many antagonists, because I think the antagonists are more character-driven. Because Bruce Willis is trying to fight for the future, to try to be a good soldier in finding a pure sample of the virus, so that 30 years later they could find a cure.
Right.
Madeline Stowe's characters fighting the tropes of psychology to say, like, hey, sometimes people we perceive as crazy actually have something to say.
Maybe they're actually time travelers, so we should believe them. Sure.
Yeah, but also, like, even Brad Pitt's character, as loony as he was, had something to say that was not invalid. I mean, even taking the pros and cons of radical environmentalism, he said a lot in his little diatribes. It wasn't all pro-environment. It wasn't pro-radical environmentalism. It was showing the negativity of radical environmentalism, but it's also showing why they're radicalized. But at the same time, everything was very, very loaded. And I again, to Madeline Stowe's character, sometimes you have to listen to the quote-unquote crazy, and I use that term very loosely as somebody who is an advocate of mental health, does not like the term mental
even the film said that, like, we shouldn't use that term. Like, there was a scene
exactly for those that we perceive as crazy.
People are nuts.
Yeah. So I think there's many antagonists, and I don't think there's a personification of it, but more so as in the awareness of it vis-a-vis the characters of it, the personal battles that they're each going through. So I'm going to give it a 1, only because I think it's a lot more subtle, but everything is a lot more loaded. And I know this is going to go to dialogue a lot, but I cannot underestimate the importance of the dialogue in this with regard to themes, with regard to antagonists and so forth. So I'm giving it a 1 based on my psychobabble right there.
I got you.
It's the fatalism of determinism compacted in a sense versus the fatalism of apocalyptic determinism for both past determinism and future determinism. The villain, the doctor who lets loose the plague, is in a sense an apocalyptic cultist almost.
Yep.
That almost a Thanosian character of maybe the world is better off without a lot of humans in there. Maybe disease is the right course of action. And he has that a very negative, very like this is an inevitability. I'm going to create it, and it is an inevitability because people are trying to go back into the past to stop it. And if anything, they're helping him.
They're only
in their
accelerating
goal.
it. Yeah.
So I think that it is personified and it is abstract at the same time.
Mm.
Yeah, I think that's true. What do you think, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. That guy's name is Dr. Peters, played by David Morse, and I think he's the closest thing to like a concrete villain that the movie has, which is interesting because you don't really know anything about him most of the movie. He kind of just
He's
like shows
barely
up as, like,
in it, really. If you think about it,
I know.
but, yeah.
Well, that's what I mean.
There's one scene where he's defined when he's talking to the main female lead.
Yeah, I
I'm
mean,
really
it's just, they plant the seed with that scene, and then they're like, "All right, now he's going to come back as like this guy that you met for 12 seconds, and he's the actual, origin of the plague," which is like really interesting, as far as that goes. But I think that you're right; it is mostly a more interesting thing. Like, I don't even know if I want to give this a 1 because I think it's a lot of the like quote unquote antagonist is the idea that there isn't free will in this kind of system, and it's more the determinism of what's going to happen. And like as the movie progresses, you kind of like come to the realization that it's going to end. Like you're just like by the end of this movie, the first time I watched it, or the first time I really understood it, I guess I was kind of just waiting for the inevitable to happen. Like I knew that it was going to end in the same way that we had already seen, by some like I don't know if that's because I picked up on something in the movie, but I've kind of always felt that way. I was like, I never expected this movie to end up where they changed the past.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really interesting way of looking at an antagonist. But if you look at it in terms of like, it was always going to be this way, can you call that an effective antagonist? I mean, I guess you could. I don't know. I'm a little bit. I turned myself around.
I'm inevitable.
Yeah.
I mean,
Thanos.
I'll try to like condense it. Like, I think you guys are right. There's a multifaceted sort of antagonist aspect, I guess I'll say, as personified by the virologist, like secondary scientist, but also like wrestling with they even set it up. There's a couple lines which goes to dialogue, I suppose. It's times like, we know time travel can be difficult on your mental, like stalwarts. So like, there's all that stuff thrown into it. So I think the characters deal with various antagonists. There's like even small ones where he has to fight off like the gang members or like the degenerates who are in the hotel and all that. Right. But like, really, it's the fatalism, determinism that one of you mentioned. And I think it's all just thrown in there, but not haphazardly. Like each one gets a little like highlight as the movie goes along and as the plot also itself like flows along. So I think it all works, whether or not the given antagonist at any time, any moment or scene in the film is tangible or not. I think every character feels, antagonized by something, and even the something that an antagonism might change. Right, as you said, like where Bruce Willis is like, "Oh no, I'm definitely crazy. There's no time travel," and Dr. Riley's like, "No, you're right. You've been time traveling," and you're right. So like that switches. So like their worldviews like clash. So I'm just saying it all works on many fronts and is very, again, deftly handled. That a lot of credit for the fact that this film can juggle all that stuff and still make it feel consistent throughout. So
I think for future we should believe all time travelers.
Mm-hmm.
I have always have.
Just to be safe.
I don't want to give anyone a Cassandra complex or anything. So
gotta do it.
But yeah, so that means we're all giving it a 1s. I certainly am. Sounds like you guys are.
I don't know, Steve. You made an interesting point there.
Yeah.
But Scott, you also made an interesting point.
Well, what are you struggling with?
The crushing weight of fate, an effective antagonist.
We've given Fate and Destiny a 1 before, in many cases. If that helps you out, there's precedent.
Steve, do you have any further discussion on this topic?
No, I think I said
Any more evidence?
what I wanted to say.
Your response to Scott's response to you.
that we've done Destiny and Fate before. I would say that's
Similar
probably a little
situations.
bit like this is more of a like a deterministic entire worldview as opposed to like a specific fate or like whatever that a character meets, you know?
Sure, but I mean, saying you understand the general idea I'm getting at, right?
Yeah, I do. But I look at that as more of like a thematic, or I guess I look at the determinism of this world as like a thematic element of the entire film in general.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that's like antagonistic or just is just the world, you know?
I'm saying it could be both, and that's sort of like another reason why I'm going to give both credit.
Well, I don't think it can be both. I mean, it can be part of the world and antagonistic, but like I'm asking, is it antagonistic or is it just the way that things are and it's not actually like, you know, does that make it antagonistic?
Yeah, I'm saying because it's the way that things are, that antagonizes the characters.
But there's no
different degrees.
I guess, but there's no like option to be antagonized, right?
No agency involved when you have no choice.
Yeah, but that in itself is antagonistic, I guess is what I'm getting at. I'm still officially giving a 1. That's all my arguments to do so.
I guess they do struggle against it.
My argument was the internal conflicts of each character. It wasn't one over. I'm just clarifying what I said.
Yeah, I got you.
I'm giving it a 1.
So
I guess they do struggle against that. So maybe I'll give it a 1 for that.
I kind of like giving it a 0.
Okay.
So it's not my choice here. I mean, it's just been predetermined. I was going to give it a 0 all along.
All right, so you are officially doing that? Predetermined. Well, why don't we move on to protagonists, and that will be, in fact, you, Steve-O.
Yeah, it's James Cole. Is Bruce Willis's character.
Jimmy C.
Is what's that?
Jimmy C.
Jimmy C. Bruce Willis does a great job in this role. I really like him. I think it's one of his best acting jobs that he's ever done, along with Brad Pitt as kind of a co-star.
An early
they both
Pitt, right?
Really,
younger Brad Pitt, but still kind of was a big role.
But Bruce Willis plays this like riding the line between not believing his own reality and like just holding it as gospel like really well. And I think that his interactions with everybody in this film are just gold. I love every time he like talks to, you know, Dr. Rayleigh, even the crazy guy who like took his teeth out, and like all his interactions with Goins, Brad Pitt's character, are great. So I'm going to give him a strong 1.
Good, boys.
I'm going to put
Rayleigh.
I'm terrible at this names. As a secondary protagonist.
I agree with that. I was waiting for one of you
they
to make that point. Yeah,
they both have complete arcs. They both have complementary arcs.
Yep.
And I'm going to give both of them. I think she actually did a phenomenal job acting in this, especially the scene when she's kidnapped by Cole. The torment of being interested in him as a case, but also fearing for her life. I thought that was really well done.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely agree. Like, I've always argued, or would always say that while Bruce Willis is like the marquee name and like the big, draw, or like what would be the actual protagonist, I think their characters, the story, and the script itself makes them both the protagonists, because it's almost like, of course, it goes back to Legend T, really, like, right? They're not quite like lovers throughout various time periods, but they do develop a relationship and a fondness for one another. Or at least they care about one another, even if they're torn between two realities in a sense. So yeah, I think it is, Steve, I agree, like one of my favorite Bruce Willis roles, quite up there. And yeah, sort of an early-ish role for Brad Pitt, which he's probably one of the big secondary characters, but nevertheless, I think both protagonists, as you mentioned, have really good arcs, and that they cross over, even they switch, where Dr. Rayleigh questions her reality, where previously she tries to convincing Cole to, question, like, be like, you're not actually, you're not time traveler, but, so it works there. That juxtaposition really helps out, bust them out. So, yeah. 1 for me. What do you think, Chris?
I agree with you. I especially agree with Ian, like the dual protagonists. I thought that was a really good observation.
Yep.
Honestly, the only thing I'm going to add is something Beth said to me. My two favorite roles of Bruce Willis were this and in Looper. And Beth said, what is it with Bruce Willis and time travel movies? I mean, they somehow elevate him. He does a really good job, has a lot of subtleties. So as a performance, it was excellent. I mean, as a protagonist, he's fantastic.
Oh, by the way, this wasn't early Brad Pitt. He had done quite a bit of movies beforehand.
Oh, really?
He was in 7 before this.
Really? 7 came out before this?
Yes.
I don't know that.
Thumb and Louise.
Thumb and Louise, I knew was before this
California.
for sure.
Cool World, California. Yeah.
Shit, California, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so it didn't really put on a map, but it was, all right, either way. But looks like we're all giving protagonist at least a 1, and I'll move along. Speaking of him, to secondary. So, yeah, I think Jeffrey Goins is a really awesome character that, again, makes sense of the world. He's sort of thrown in there in like the first third of the film, and then you upon like this viewing, it's almost as if the film was like, oh, he'll be in here for briefly and then it won't matter again, but the character keeps recurring, is in fact integral to the bootstraps loop in a sense, right, as you mentioned. And yeah, there's all Christopher Plummer, isn't it, as Brad Pitt's father, who is the top scientist at the virology center that he works at, and of course what was the guy's name? The guy who actually unleashes the plague, who develops it.
Dr. Peters is his character's name. David Morse is
David
the
Morse,
actor that plays him.
So like it takes a little bit of time for like that to like unfold. Like when that moment hits you, you see him at the airport, or like you see him in the lab, and like bam, like the wham moment, you know it's him. And I think like everyone else rounds it out well enough. Like if you guys notice, Christopher Maroney, isn't it? Like real quickly as a
Christopher Maroney is I wrote him down, Lieutenant Halpern.
Yeah, I don't think he even says his name in the film. It doesn't matter though. Like he's there, and like just everyone else, like the cab driver lady, who's
this was an early role for Christopher Maroney.
He still had all his hair. Jesus Christ, right? Anyway, I think like it all those little like the scientist board, Jones, and the future scientists, and Ian put out like a really cool thing, sort of like is a nice mirror parallel to the psychology board in 1990, 1996 of the film when Cole meets them. So yeah, like I think of course Brad Pitt is like number 1 secondary character, like the most standout, but everything else just adds to it. Even if it's not fully fleshed out, it's perfectly fine and it all works. Even Cole, his sort of cellmate buddy, who also like time travel crosses paths with him, like they're both in World War One, and that's sort of like a key puzzle piece for Rayleigh in her research and all that. So yeah, I think it's all solid enough, and don't have much more to say, but I'm giving it a 1. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah. I'm going to give a special shout out to Dr. Fletcher, played by Frank Gorshin. He was the Riddler in the Batman show, which I didn't like, but Gorshin actually came on my radar, and I haven't mentioned it in a while.
Right.
But he was in a Star Trek episode called "Let That Be Your Best." Let that be your last battlefield. And the subtleties of his performance really struck me. So I was really excited when I saw in the opening credits that he was in this film. And I really, the term character actor gets thrown around a lot. And a lot of times he was the one actually put the term to notice what people call character actors, because a lot of times they get praised and dismissed simultaneously.
Sure, yeah, true.
I mean, so his character was really great for the amount of time he was in, but I'm going to give a lot of props to Gorshin's portrayal, because he does a lot of little things. Like there's one point, the way he pulls a cigarette out of his pack and almost flips it into his mouth. And
I noticed that always, yeah.
The thing is, he was a phenomenal actor, and I wish he had gotten more of the notoriety and the roles that I think he rightly deserved, because I think what brought Fletcher out, as with most of the roles I've seen of his, was the subtleties, what he didn't do more than what he did do, if that makes sense.
Sure, yeah.
So I'm definitely giving it a 1. I mean, obviously, everything you guys said, I loved everybody else's performance, but I really wanted to give a shout out to Frank Gorshin, because I think he really is one of the underappreciated actors of the time.
All right.
Yep. I agree with most of what you guys said. I think you've named every character that I was going to name at this point. But
not that many, so sorry. But
I kind of view Dr. Rayleigh as a supporting character, and I give her very strong credit. I like you, you said, Scott, earlier that like obviously Brad Pitt's the best supporting character, but I think that's because you have her
put her
as a
protagonist,
protagonist, right? Like
Yep.
I think that she is probably the best supporting character, right up there with Jeffrey Goins, Brad Pitt's Jeffrey Goins character. So yeah, I'm gonna give that a 1 too.
All right,
The old 1 too.
one's all around, and that'll move us along to dialogue, and that'll be you, Ian.
There's a lot of smart dialogue with dealing with callbacks purposefully for the time travel segments. Overall, I was actually fairly impressed, whether it is Brad Pitt ranting, although to me, he kind of hams it up at times, but
He's definitely like, playing into it for sure.
I mean, he's almost literally chewing the scenery at parts, but that works. But overall, I think that this is it's Terry Gilliam and the guy who wrote Blade Runner writing a time travel movie. And if that doesn't sell
It's a
you
recipe
right
for
there,
success.
like it's phenomenal. I think the dialogue's a strong point of this.
I agree. I don't have much more to add. I'm going to give it a 1. I'll only say that given that I've seen this film many, many times, there are things subtle, possibly little nuances that you may not notice upon first viewing that upon repeated viewings get better and better. And in fact, to just cap off my point, there is a part where Bruce Willis takes Madeline Stowe to, they're seeing a Hitchcock film fest, and he goes, the movie doesn't change, but you change every time you see it. And I think that is applicable to this film itself. And that is going to be my closing statement for giving it a 1. And everything else really works. Like you said, they tie it all in, they give red herrings, and then they give misdirection, but then they give you actual answers and clues. They don't leave anything unanswered. So yeah, it's pretty strong. For me, dialogue is one of the strongest points.
I agree with everything you said wholeheartedly, and based upon what I had said before about how the nuances of it, I'm giving it a 1.
All right.
Yep, I agree. I think it's a 1 for dialogue. I really like a lot of this dialogue, and it's memorable. It's quotable.
You got any favorite lines or cool lines that you like?
Well, yeah, obviously, like the little tiny, what do you call them, little germs?
Huh? What germs?
What? Yeah, like that whole rant. Like any time that Brad Pitt goes on a rant is pretty memorable, and like you said, that line in the theater is great. And then I feel like this movie has a bunch of those types of lines where it's
exactly. That's not the only example of that, right?
Every time you watch it, you pull out a different one too. It's not like you notice the same one over and over and over again, which is I really like about it.
At least that's been the case for me, Steve-O. Yeah, good call.
So I'm gonna give it a strong 1 for dialogue. I really like this flick.
All right, so let's move on. 1 for you, and let's go to style, and that'll be you, Chris. Start us off on Terry Gilliam's style.
Brazil plus Fisher King equals 12 Monkeys.
I gotta watch Fisher King again. Okay. That's a great movie.
I got you.
Because if you look at Brazil, he shares a lot with the director, and I should have looked this up before cast, who did City of Lost Children. And I always, with this one, there's a lot of crossover, and I'm not really sure who influenced who, or if they just happen to be of like mind. But Fisher King, to me, a lot of it was a departure of what we'd seen of Gilliam beforehand.
Yeah,
this had the surreality and the reality combined perfectly.
Exactly. Yes. Well said.
But I'm also going to give cues to the soundtrack, because at times it was completely in the background and very understated. And sometimes it was right in your face and exactly what you'd expect
when it needed to be.
It is a phenomenal soundtrack. It really is. It's something that I'm surprised I didn't pick up prior to this, and I will rectify that. And I'm going to find the name of the composer. His name was
hold on, I just had it.
Paul Buckmaster.
Yeah,
yes.
A lot of credit has to be given to his score of this film.
I agree. Good.
Oh, I just found out the guy did Say All Children did Delicatessen.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. He did Delicatessen. He did Amelie. He's got a new movie coming out next year.
Resurrection.
Damn.
And Alien Resurrection.
Well, that's a hell of a resume. But no, I mean, I definitely agree. Of course, I like the motif that do. It's very sort of mysterious and playful, and it plays whenever they reference 12 Monkeys or they discover new information. And yeah, I mean, it's got the style. You can even notice some of the weird stilted Dutch angles that we were mentioning from Brazil are still here as well. but not as pronounced. But yeah, it all works really well.
What's weird to me is that I've seen a number of Terry Gilliam films. I never saw this before. This is weirdly one of the more restrained ones that he's done.
Mhm.
I mean, it's a later one, so I think he sort of.
Yeah, but you could still see the hints of his absurdity in there. But overall, it's just played very straight. Even the futuristic scenes are kind of downplayed as they were in Brazil. So, yeah, Terry Gilliam is one of those stylistic directors.
Yeah, I agree.
Ever evolving. Yeah.
He lost nothing, and like it impressed me.
Some of his newer stuff isn't quite as
maybe not,
fun,
but I think this is one of his heydays, like this and Brazil, of course. And if you can see it back here, if you're watching this, Fear and Loathing, he did that. So
I forgot
came out like around the same year, anyway.
Zero Theorem, which came out a couple years ago.
Yep, which we might review eventually.
We
but
should
I do
review eventually.
And Baron Munchausen.
Yes, we're getting to Baron Munchausen. So we agreed upon.
We're going to get to Time Bandits too.
Yes,
that would be my choice.
We agreed during Brazil that we're going to do a bunch of Gilliam stuff. But either way, I think his style is still unique, recognizable, and holds up in this film as well, which looks like we all agree upon.
I have not spoken about style yet. And I disagree. No, I'm just kidding. Obviously, it's Gilliam.
Yeah. But
his style is great. Dutch angles, you guys mentioned. The soundtrack is fantastic. The cinematography is great. You got to get those.
Yeah.
You got to get those sideways views. Yep. But
the 45-degree angles or whatever. Yeah.
It's classic Gilliam with a little bit more serious take, or like not quite as much like jokiness or like joking around.
Steve, they're playing it more straight, so therefore like he's not I'm exaggerating.
I'm kind of going off of Ian's point where he said that. So yeah, it's great flick, and I got to give it a 1 for the style for sure.
And then one thing I do want to mention, one more thing, is the compositing in this. I mean, this was in the day that CG was starting to take over. We'd come from mats and so forth. And I have to say, a lot of the composite shots, a lot of the transitions from what was to what is, and vice versa, and little things like the angel being lifted up when she's buying the shirts or whatever.
See, that's something I think that takes multiple watches to like pick up on.
Yeah, but I mean,
I'm not saying like more observant.
Nowadays, you look at the lion on top of the building and you think, oh, CGI, everything's CGI. But back then, 25 years ago, whatever, you really have to figure out like how much of it was CGI, how much of it was practical, what the composite did. So I'm definitely giving it a 1.
Credit on that. Yeah.
I'm actually going to disagree with you slightly on that. And to be a kind of critic here, I thought that most of the scenes with the animals were poorly done. Because it felt like a very old school.
Sorry, guys.
Put that back.
Time travel.
Time travel.
It felt like an old school, like 40s style of handling animals in a film.
I see what you mean. Sure.
You just have a green screen behind you now.
My green screen just blew up. Thanks, Zoom.
But I just want to say, if there's one thing I'm going to say broke me out of Terry Gilliam's styling, it was seeing, especially the opening scene with the grizzly bear. Like, there's no sense of realism here or any actual threat. It's like you have the trained bear sitting there waiting for its snack off screen. Like,
I see what you mean, but I think that's few and far between. That doesn't detract. But I'd certainly like. I can see
if I have one criticism,
it's that. Yeah, that's fair. That's completely valid. But it still means you're giving it a 1 though overall. Even if there's a little bit, those are the small cracks there.
I'm just trying to, so we're not just all optimism here. We need a little bit of reality.
Yeah, the graphs on the highway were not as impressive as I remembered. But I mean, not just the animals. I'm speaking to the general composite.
Sure, I got you. But it's still overall good enough for a 1, given for the other elements.
But I agree with you on the berry.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that.
If anyone's seen the new Mystery Center Cry Wilderness thing that they did, like the way that the animals were used there is very reminiscent.
Similar.
All right. Well, let's bring it home. Recommendation, Steve-O, do you recommend 12 Monkeys?
Yeah, it's still one of my favorite movies. It looks like I'm giving it a 10. Mm-hmm. I didn't expect to do that, to be honest, but
you are, though.
I think it's fairly close to a 10 movie. I probably, if I was like going off the cuff, I'd probably give it a 9. Like,
Sure.
But I really like this movie. I think it holds up very strongly. And I'm glad that Chris, did you say this is your first time seeing it too?
No, I've seen it.
Oh, okay.
Chris-
I was like
Chris
you,
and I've seen this
at
movie
certain
a lot.
points you were talking like you were like seeing things for the first time, and I was kind of confused.
He said
I
it's
thought-
been a
I
while.
haven't seen it in like 20 years. So.
Oh, okay.
He's a professional. He's goes to every single movie like he's seeing it for the first time.
Fair. But yeah, like I was interested to hear what you thought about it, Ian, because you were seeing it for the first time, and I'm glad to hear that it, upon your first viewing, you enjoyed it quite a bit. So it's going to be a strong one for me for recommend, and everybody should watch this movie. I think it's got something for everyone.
I agree. I'm giving it a 1. I highly recommend the movie.
Yeah.
I do recommend this. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I think that Heinlein's by his bootstraps and this make a good pairing if you're interested in taking a look at
Nice double kill.
writing a paper one day to all of you who watch us for their high school classes. But
Doing your work anyways, but
And
Yeah,
I
but-
throw in Looper on that, actually, be honest with you as well.
I actually kind of want to do a little bit more, talk about time travel representation in films and Looper and Primer,
No.
to be specific for those.
Yeah.
two. Anyway.
I'd see Primer again.
Again, I love closed time loops, and I mean, that's what we're always going to be giving it.
Yeah.
So we couldn't have given anything
it
else.
doesn't really matter. Yeah. I mean, they could come in right now and tell me what it's scoring. But like, of course, yes, I'm going to recommend it. It was my pick anyways. And it's funny you mentioned that, like, to close off that. Originally, when we're still going to do a time travel like sort of series at some point, but this is going to be my pick for that. But given that we're living in the virus times, has become my phrase. So like I said, it does double duty. But yeah, of course, I'm going to recommend it. That it still holds up. It has a great close loop. It opens on the closing, if you will. Like Bruce Willis watches himself get killed in the past as a kid, and watches his adult self get shot, and it really ties itself together there. And everything else we just said, it's a tight as hell script. All the acting is amazing and everything else. So yeah, I highly recommend it. It still holds up, and one of the best films, both about a plague and about time travel plagues films, which maybe is the very most niche possible genre you can possibly have. But I'm going to strongly recommend it. And if there's anyone else to add before I give out the numbers? No? All right. So like you said, Steve-O, Chris, and myself have given a 10, and Ian follows suit shortly behind there with a 9 because of the antagonist kerfuffle or like division. But either way, still very strong, 9.75 overall for 12 Monkeys, which I think is quite fitting. Like, I see what you mean, Steve-O. Like, offhand, would I have given it like a 10 randomly? Like, maybe not, but on our scale, I think it does hit all the points, at least personally for me. And for where it stands, yeah, holds up. And, we need to send a monkey with a sandwich down a well, perhaps, at some point. But I think...
Bet you that monkey's going to eat that
See,
sandwich.
like, even that, like, that's a humorous thing that comes, like, in and out throughout the film, but it's relevant and adds a little levity. But overall, yeah, that's what we stand on 12 Monkeys. So I think that will do it. I have to go try and travel myself back to 2035 or whatever year it was. I've been Scott Thurlow, and I've been here with Christopher Morgan.
Drugs for everyone.
Lots of drugs, Bob, and Stephen Demosi.
Best part about COVID-19 is that all the airports are closed, so I can't see myself get shot in one.
Not true. Not yet. And Jonathan Ian Manzer.
I'm Laplace's demon Laplace.
That is amazing.
Nice.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us. Keep safe, and we'll see you next time.
Editing and engineering by Christopher Morgan. Music by Christopher Morgan. Check us out on YouTube and iTunes for the shows, and on Facebook and Twitter for updates. Or Mott's?